The dust never settled on Veridax Prime anymore. It hung in the air like a dirty brown curtain, mixing with the smoke from distant fires. The war had turned the once beautiful planet into a nightmare of broken buildings and desperate people. Kessa stood at the massive metal gate of Checkpoint 7. Her small hands gripped the cold bars as she pressed her face between them. Tears ran down her blue cheeks, leaving clean trails through the dirt on her skin. She was only 7 years old, barely tall enough to see through the gap in the gate. "Please," she cried out in broken galactic common, "My she need help, please." The Kryn guard looked down at her with cold yellow eyes. His grey skin looked like stone in the harsh sunlight. He wore thick armor that made him look twice as big as he really was. A large rifle hung across his chest. "Move away from the gate, child," he said in a flat voice. "No entry for the sick. Orders are orders." Behind Kessa, her mother lay on a dirty stretcher. Myra's blue skin had turned pale, almost white. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. Blood soaked through the bandages wrapped around her chest and stomach. 3 days ago, a bomb had exploded near the market where she had been looking for food. 3 days of pain and waiting and being turned away from every safe place. "But she dying," Kessa sobbed. "Please, sir, she a good person. She'll work hard. Please let her in." The guard turned away. He had heard the same words 1,000 times. Sick people, injured people, old people. They all begged. They all cried. But the orders were clear. The safe zone behind the checkpoint was already too full. Only healthy workers could enter. Only people who could contribute. Around them, hundreds of other refugees waited in long lines. They came from a dozen different species. Some had fur, some had scales, some had skin like humans. All of them looked tired and scared. All of them wanted through the gate. An older Talvik woman standing nearby touched Kessa's shoulder gently. "Come away, little one," she whispered. "You are making the guards angry. They might send you both away completely." Kessa shook her head hard. "No, I stay. Mama need doctor. I not leave." She turned back to the gate and cried louder. "Help. Someone help. My mama need doctor." Several refugees looked at her with sad eyes. A few shook their heads. One man muttered to his wife, "Poor child. But what can anyone do?" About 200 meters away, Lieutenant Danny Hayes stood beside his military vehicle. He wore the tan and green uniform of the Human Expeditionary Force. A small flag patch on his shoulder showed the Earth, that blue and green world so far from here. He had been watching the checkpoint for over an hour, observing and taking notes. The humans had arrived on Veridax Prime 2 weeks ago. Their mission was simple: watch the ceasefire between the Kryn Empire and the Talvek Confederation. Make sure neither side started fighting again. Don't interfere with local business. But that little girl's crying was hard to ignore. Danny lifted his binoculars and focused on the scene at the gates. He could see the small blue child clearly now. He could see her mother on the stretcher, barely moving. He could see the Kryn guards standing like statues, unmoved by the tears. His partner, Corporal Lisa Green, stood next to him. She followed his gaze and sighed. "Don't even think about it, Danny," she said quietly. "We have orders. No interference with checkpoint operations." "I know the orders," Danny replied, but he didn't lower the binoculars. "That woman is going to die out there," Lisa said. "We both know it, but if we step in, we could cause a whole new problem. The Kryn are already suspicious of us. They think we favor the Talvek side." "Do we just watch then?" Danny asked. "Just stand here and watch a child lose her mother?" Lisa didn't answer. She didn't have a good answer. At the checkpoint, Kessa had fallen to her knees. Her small voice was going hoarse from crying. "Please, please, please. I do anything. I work, I clean, I carry things. Just help my mama, please." The Kryn guard commander, Vex, walked over to her. He was taller than the other guards and had more medals on his armor. His face showed no emotion at all. "Final warning, child. Move away from the gate or we will remove you from the line completely. Your mother will never get in if you keep causing problems." Kessa's large dark eyes went wide with fear. She stumbled backward, away from the gate. She ran to her mother's side and knelt down, taking Mira's weak hand in both of hers. "Mama, wake up," she whispered. "Please wake up. We try again later. Please be okay." Mira's eyes opened slightly. She looked at her daughter and tried to smile. "Kessa, my sweet girl, you must be brave." "No, Mama, you be okay. You get better. We get through gate. We be safe." But even as she said the words, Kessa could see the truth. Her mother was getting worse. The color was draining from her face. Her breathing was slower. Danny lowered his binoculars. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the metal frame so hard his knuckles turned white. "I'm calling this in," he said. Lisa looked at him sharply. Danny, don't. I have to. He pulled out his communication device and pressed the button. Lieutenant Hayes, to Captain Grant. I have a situation that requires immediate attention. The response came quickly. Captain Nicole Grant's voice was clear and professional. Go ahead, Lieutenant. What's the situation? Danny took a breath. Ma'am, I'm observing a medical emergency at Checkpoint 7. A critically injured refugee, female, with a minor child. The local authorities are denying them entry to the safe zone. The patient appears to be dying. Request permission to provide humanitarian medical assistance. There was a long pause. Danny could almost hear the captain thinking, weighing options, considering consequences. Stand by, Lieutenant, Grant finally said. I need to review the situation. Send me your visual feed. Danny activated the camera on his device and aimed it at the checkpoint. He made sure the captain could see everything. The dying woman, the crying child, the unmoved guards. At the gate, Kessa was singing now, a soft lullaby in her native language, the same song her mother used to sing to her when she was smaller. Her voice cracked and broke, but she kept singing. It was all she could do. Other refugees began to notice. They stopped talking among themselves. They watched the small girl trying to comfort her dying mother. Some of them started to cry too. They all knew that pain. They had all lost someone in this war. A young Viridian man near the front of the line called out to the guards, "Let them through. She's dying. Have mercy." Another voice joined in, "Let the child's mother through." Soon, more voices rose up. Not angry shouts, but pleading voices, begging the guards to show compassion. Commander Vex turned to face the crowd. He raised his rifle slightly, not pointing it at anyone, but making his meaning clear. "Silence," he commanded. "Anyone who continues to disrupt this checkpoint will be removed from processing. That includes everyone. Return to your places." The voices died down. Fear won over compassion. No one wanted to lose their chance at safety. Danny watched it all through his camera. His heart pounded in his chest. Every instinct told him to move, to act, to do something. But his training told him to wait for orders. "Come on, Captain," he thought. "Give me the green light." Kessa's song faded to a whisper. Her mother's hand had gone limp in hers. The little girl looked up at the sky, at the ships passing overhead, at the universe that seemed to have forgotten her. "Help us," she whispered to no one and everyone. "Someone please help us." Captain Nicole Grant sat in her command chair aboard the human ship orbiting Veridax Prime. The vessel, called the USS Horizon, hung in the darkness of space like a silent guardian. Through the large windows of the bridge, she could see the planet below, half covered in shadow. On the screen in front of her, the video feed from Lieutenant Hayes played. She watched the small blue child crying beside her dying mother. She watched the guards turn them away. She watched the other refugees lower their heads in defeat. Nicole had been a captain for 8 years. She had seen war, death, and suffering across a dozen worlds. But something about this scene cut deeper than most. "Replay the last 30 seconds, she said to the communications officer. The young man at the console nodded. The video jumped back and played again. Kessa's small voice came through the speakers, broken and desperate. Commander Jake Morris stood beside Nicole's chair. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face lined with years of service. He had been her second in command for 3 years, and she trusted his judgment. "It's a difficult situation," Jake said quietly, "but our orders are clear. We're here to monitor the ceasefire, not to interfere with local governance." Nicole didn't look away from the screen. "A child is watching her mother die. Jake, that's not governance. That's cruelty." "I agree. But if we intervene, we risk escalating tensions with the Kryn. They already think we're biased toward the Talvek. This could give them the excuse they need to claim we're taking sides." Nicole finally turned to look at him. "So we do nothing." Jake's expression was pained. "I'm not saying I like it, Captain. I'm saying we need to think about the bigger picture. Thousands of lives depend on our peacekeeping mission here. If that mission fails because we broke protocol, those thousands suffer." The bridge door opened and Lieutenant Patricia Cole walked in. She was the ship's chief medical officer, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and steady hands. She had heard about the situation through the ship's communication network. "Captain, I've reviewed the medical feed," Patricia said. "That woman has severe internal injuries. Without immediate surgical intervention, she has maybe 2 hours left. Probably less. Can you help her if we bring her aboard?" Nicole asked. "Yes, Isili, her species has similar biology to humans. I've treated Viridians before." Jake shook his head. "Captain, you know what I'm going to say." "Then say it," Nicole replied. "We can't save everyone. If we help this one woman, what about the next one? And the one after that? Where do we draw the line?" Patricia stepped forward. We draw the line at doing what's right, Commander. We're not talking about policy or strategy. We're talking about a dying mother and her child. I understand your compassion, Doctor, Jake said. But compassion without discipline leads to chaos. We have to follow the rules, even when the rules are wrong. Patricia shot back. Nicole held up her hand. That's enough. Both of you make good points. She stood up from her chair and walked to the window. She looked down at Veridax Prime, at the planet torn apart by war. How many mothers had died down there? How many children had cried? The numbers were too big to count, but she could see this one. This one small girl with blue skin and tears running down her face. Get me Sergeant Kevin Ross, Nicole said. A moment later, the sergeant's face appeared on the communication screen. Kevin was a veteran soldier, a man who had served in ground combat for 15 years. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp. Captain, he said simply. Sergeant, I need your opinion. If I ordered you to intervene in the situation at Checkpoint 7, what would be the tactical risks? Kevin didn't hesitate. The Kryn guards are armed, but they won't fire on us unless we give them a reason. Their orders are to control refugees, not to start a war with humans. If we approach professionally and frame it as medical assistance, they'll likely back down rather than escalate. And if they don't back down, then we have a problem. But I don't think it'll come to that. The Kryn are proud, but they're not stupid. They know what happens if they shoot at human soldiers. Nicole nodded. Thank you, Sergeant. Stand by for further orders. She turned back to Jake and Patricia. The two of them watched her, waiting. I want both of you to understand something, Nicole said. I know the rules. I helped write some of them. I know what our mission is supposed to be, but I also know why I joined the military in the first place. She walked back to her chair and sat down. I didn't sign up to watch children suffer. I didn't put on this uniform to hide behind regulations while people die. We have the power to help. We have the medical facilities. We have the personnel. And most importantly, we have the moral responsibility. Jake sighed. Captain, I respect you more than anyone I've ever served with, but this decision could end your career. The review board will question every aspect of this. Let them question, Nicole said. I'd rather explain my actions than explain my inaction. Patricia smiled slightly. I'll prepare the medical bay. Nicole activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Captain Grant. I need a volunteer team for a humanitarian medical mission. We'll be extracting a critically injured civilian from Checkpoint 7. This mission carries risk, both tactical and political. I need people who understand that and are willing to proceed anyway. Within seconds, responses came flooding in. More than 30 crew members volunteered. Nicole wasn't surprised. The men and women of the Human Expeditionary Force had joined for the same reasons she had. She selected a small team, Lieutenant Hayes, who was already on site, Corporal Amy Chen, their best combat medic, Private First Class Steve Martinez, a communications specialist, and Sergeant Laura Bennett, a soldier known for her courage and her ability to stay calm under pressure. Nicole opened a direct channel to Danny Hayes. His face appeared on her screen, hopeful and anxious. Lieutenant, you have authorization to proceed with medical evacuation, she said. Take Corporal Chen, Private Martinez, and Sergeant Bennett. Approach the checkpoint as a medical team, not a combat unit. Your objective is to provide immediate medical care and transport the patient to the horizon. Danny's face flooded with relief. Understood, Captain. What if the Kryn guards refuse to cooperate? Then you make it clear that we are acting on humanitarian grounds and that we will not be deterred. Be diplomatic, but be firm. Record everything. I want documentation of every word and action. Yes, ma'am. And Danny. Nicole's voice softened slightly. Bring that little girl's mother home, whatever it takes. I will, Captain. I promise. The communication ended. Nicole sat back in her chair and looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, a small child was crying, but not for much longer. Jake stood beside her chair, his arms crossed. You know this is going to cause problems, I know. The Kryn will file complaints. Maybe the Talvek too. The Earth Command will want explanations. There will be inquiries and reports, and maybe even a court-martial. I know all of that, Jake, and you're doing it anyway. Nicole looked at him. When my daughter was 7 years old, she got sick. Really sick. I was deployed in another system, and I couldn't get home. My wife took her to the hospital, and the doctors worked through the night to save her. They could have turned her away. They could have said they were too busy, that they had other patients, that the rules didn't allow it. But they didn't. They saved my little girl's life. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I never got to thank those doctors properly, but I can honor what they did. I can be the person who doesn't turn away. I can be the one who saves someone's child. Jake was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. Then let's do it right. I'll monitor the situation from here and coordinate backup if needed. Thank you, Jake. Patricia headed toward the medical bay, already preparing equipment and supplies. Jake returned to his station and began monitoring all the feeds from the surface. Nicole sat alone in her command chair, watching the screen. The video feed still showed Kessa and her mother at the checkpoint. The little girl had stopped crying now. She just sat quietly, holding her mother's hand, waiting for the end. Not today, Nicole thought. Today you get a miracle. On the surface, Danny Hayes gathered his team. Amy Chen checked her medical supplies. Steve Martinez tested the communication gear. Laura Bennett inspected her sidearm just in case. They climbed into an armored transport vehicle, a sturdy machine designed to handle rough terrain and potential threats. The engine roared to life. Everyone ready? Danny asked. Ready, sir, they answered together. The vehicle began moving toward Checkpoint 7. Inside, each soldier felt the weight of what they were about to do. They were breaking protocol. They were risking their careers. They were potentially endangering the entire peacekeeping mission, but they were also doing what was right, and sometimes that was all that mattered. The armored transport rumbled through the dusty streets of Veridax Prime. Lieutenant Danny Hayes sat in the front seat, watching the refugee camps pass by. Thousands of makeshift shelters stretched in every direction, made from scraps of metal, torn fabric, and broken building materials. In the back, Corporal Amy Chen organized her medical supplies. She had bandages, medicine injectors, emergency surgical tools, and a portable scanner, everything she might need to stabilize a dying patient. Private Steve Martinez sat beside her, checking the communication equipment. He would record everything that happened at the checkpoint, video, audio, everything. If this went wrong, they would at least have evidence of their intentions. Sergeant Laura Bennett sat near the door, calm and ready. She was 42 years old and had seen more combat than the rest of them combined. Her hand rested on her sidearm, not threatening, just prepared. 2 minutes out, Danny said over his shoulder. Laura leaned forward. Remember, we're medical personnel first, soldiers second. We're there to help, not to fight. Keep your weapons holstered unless I give the word. Understood, Amy and Steve said together. The transport turned a corner and Checkpoint 7 came into view. The massive gate stood like a wall between the desperate and the safe. Hundreds of refugees still waited in lines, hoping for their turn. And there, near the front, was the small blue girl sitting beside her mother's stretcher. Danny felt his chest tighten. The woman looked worse than she had 20 minutes ago. Her skin was almost white now, drained of its natural blue color. She wasn't moving at all. Amy, how long does she have? He asked. Amy pulled out her medical scanner and pointed it through the windshield, getting a reading from this distance. She looked at the display and her face went pale. Her vital signs are critical. Heart rate is weak and irregular. Internal bleeding is severe. If we don't get her into surgery within the next hour, she won't make it. Then let's not waste time, Laura said. The transport pulled up about 30 meters from the checkpoint gate. The engine shut off. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the doors opened and the 4 human soldiers stepped out. Immediately, every eye turned toward them. The refugees stopped talking. The Kryn guard snapped to attention. Even Kessa looked up from her mother's side, confusion and hope mixing on her small face. Commander Vex, the Kryn officer in charge, stepped forward. His yellow eyes narrowed as he watched the humans approach. His hand moved to his weapon, not drawing it but making his wariness clear. This is a restricted checkpoint, Vex said in heavily accented Galactic Common. Human soldiers have no authority here. Danny walked forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. Commander Vex, I am Lieutenant Danny Hayes of the Human Expeditionary Force. We are not here to challenge your authority. We have identified a medical emergency and are offering humanitarian assistance. We have our own medical facilities, Vex replied coldly. We do not need human help. With respect, Commander, your medical facilities have refused to treat the injured woman over there. Danny pointed toward Myra and Kessa. She is dying. We have the capability to save her life. We are requesting permission to provide emergency medical care. Vex's jaw tightened. That woman was denied entry based on established protocols. The checkpoint rules are clear. The sick and injured are not permitted into the safe zone. Then we will treat her right here, Amy said, stepping forward with her medical kit. We're not asking to change your rules. We're just asking to help someone who's dying. This is not your concern, Vex said, his voice rising. You are peacekeepers. Your mandate is to monitor the ceasefire between military forces. This is a civilian matter. Laura moved to stand beside Danny. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Commander, saving lives is everyone's concern. We're not trying to create a problem, we're trying to prevent a tragedy." More Kryn guards moved forward, forming a line between the humans and the checkpoint. There were 8 of them now, all armed. The tension in the air grew thick. The refugees watching began to murmur. Some pulled out communication devices, recording the confrontation. Within seconds, the scene was being broadcast to networks across the planet and beyond. Kessa, who had been watching everything with wide eyes, suddenly stood up. Her legs were shaky, but she ran toward the human soldiers. Her small feet kicked up dust as she moved. "Wait, child," Vex called out, but she didn't stop. She ran straight to Danny and grabbed his hand with both of her. Her small fingers were cold and trembling. "Please, please, Mr. Soldier," she said in broken galactic common. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "My mama dying. They know, let her in. They say she too sick. Please help. I beg you please." Danny looked down at her. Up close, he could see that her large dark eyes were red from tears. Dirt covered her clothes and her hair. She probably hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. He knelt down so he was at her eye level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Kessa, my mama named Mira. She good person. She work hard. She'll take care of me. Please help her." Danny felt something break inside his chest. He thought about his own sister back on Earth, about his nieces and nephews. He thought about what it would feel like to be this small and this scared. "I'm going to help your mama, Kessa," he said softly. "I promise." He stood up and looked at Commander Vex. "Sir, this child has asked for help. I'm not leaving here without providing it." Vex's expression hardened. "If you interfere with this checkpoint, you will be creating an international incident. The Kryn Empire will file formal complaints with Earth Command. Your career will be finished." "Then, it's finished," Danny said simply. "But that woman is not going to die today." He gestured to Amy. "Corporal Chen, begin medical treatment immediately." Amy didn't hesitate. She walked straight toward Myra's stretcher, her medical kit in hand. 2 Kryn guards moved to block her path. Laura's voice cut through the air like a knife. "I strongly suggest you step aside." The guards looked at Vex for orders. The commander's face was a mask of anger and frustration. He was trapped. If he let the humans through, he was disobeying his own protocols. If he stopped them by force, he was starting a fight with the human expeditionary force, and the whole galaxy was watching. A refugee in the crowd called out, "Let them help her." Another voice joined in, "Let the doctor through." Soon, dozens of refugees were shouting. They pressed forward, not threatening, but showing their support. They had all seen too much death. They wanted to see someone saved. Steve Martinez stood back, recording everything. His camera captured the Kryn guards with their weapons, the human soldiers standing firm, the small child holding Danny's hand, and the dying woman on the stretcher. The footage was already spreading across the networks. News organizations were picking it up. People on 100 different worlds were watching this moment unfold. Commander Vex realized he had lost control of the situation. Whatever he decided now would define him forever. He would either be remembered as the officer who let the humans save a life, or the one who stopped them and let a woman die in front of her child. He took a deep breath. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. "Let the human doctor through," he said quietly to his guards. The guards lowered their weapons and moved away. Amy walked past them without a word and knelt beside Mira's stretcher. Kessa ran to her mother's side. Mama, the humans here. They help you. You be okay." Myra's eyes opened slightly. She tried to speak but no sound came out. Amy pulled out her scanner and ran it over Mira's body. Her face was grim as she read the results. "Severe internal bleeding, collapsed lung, possible damage to the liver and spleen," she said, speaking into her recorder for documentation. "Patient is in critical condition. Blood pressure is dangerously low. She needs immediate surgical intervention." She looked up at Danny. "We need to move her now, sir. She won't survive transport in 30 minutes. Laura was already moving. She brought the portable stretcher from their vehicle, an advanced medical bed with built-in monitors and stabilization equipment. "Help me move her," Amy said to Laura. Together, they carefully lifted Myra from the dirty refugee stretcher onto the clean medical one. Kessa stayed close, her small hand holding her mother's. Amy attached monitoring leads to Myra's chest and arms. A small screen on the stretcher began displaying vital signs. The numbers were not good. "Starting emergency stabilization," Amy said. She pulled out a medical injector and pressed it against Myra's neck. "This will help with the bleeding and boost her blood pressure." She worked quickly and efficiently, her hand steady despite the pressure. She had trained for moments like this. She had saved lives in worse conditions, in combat zones and disaster areas. But this felt different. This felt personal. The refugees watched in silence as the human medic fought to save one of their own. Some of them started to cry. Others clasped their hands together in prayer or hope. Kessa looked up at Danny with tears in her eyes. "She'll be okay. You promise?" Danny knelt down again and put his hand on her shoulder. "My friend is one of the best doctors in the galaxy. She's going to do everything she can." "We need to move," Amy said urgently. "Her vitals are dropping. We're running out of time." Danny Hayes stood up and faced Commander Vex directly. The Kryn officer had allowed Amy to begin treatment, but Danny knew that getting Mira onto their transport and away from the checkpoint would be a different matter entirely. "Commander, we need to evacuate this patient to our medical ship immediately," Danny said. "She requires surgery that can only be performed in our facilities." Vex's yellow eyes flickered with uncertainty. Around them, hundreds of refugees watched and waited. More were pulling out recording devices. The checkpoint had become a stage, and every action would be seen by millions. "You are permitted to provide emergency aid," Vex said slowly, "not to remove refugees from the processing area." "She's not a refugee anymore," Laura Bennett said, stepping forward. "She's a patient under human medical care. We're responsible for her now." "That is not how this works," Vex replied, his voice growing harder. "You cannot simply take people away from our jurisdiction." Amy looked up from where she knelt beside Mira. "Lieutenant, her blood pressure is dropping fast. We have maybe 20 minutes before her organs start shutting down. We need to move now." Kessa clutched her mother's hand tighter, her small body shaking with fear. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood that something bad was happening. The adults were arguing while her mother was dying. Danny made a decision. He pulled out his communication device and opened a channel to Captain Grant. "Captain, this is Hayes. We have successfully begun medical treatment of the patient, but we are meeting resistance in evacuating her to the ship. Request guidance." Nicole Grant's voice came through clear and strong. "Lieutenant, what is the nature of the resistance?" "The checkpoint commander is refusing to allow us to remove the patient from the area, ma'am. He claims we don't have jurisdiction." There was a brief pause. Then Grant's voice returned, and this time she was speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Commander Vex, this is Captain Nicole Grant of the Human Expeditionary Force. I am formally notifying you that the patient in question is now under the protection of Earth Medical Services. We are invoking the Galactic Convention on Emergency Medical Care, Article 7, which states that any medical personnel may evacuate a critical patient to appropriate facilities without local permission when life is in immediate danger." Vex's face darkened. "Captain Grant, with respect, the Galactic Convention applies to war zones and natural disasters, not to checkpoint operations." "Commander, this entire planet is a war zone," Grant replied firmly. "The ceasefire may be holding at the moment, but that doesn't change the fundamental situation. More importantly, I don't need a legal debate. I need you to step aside and let my people save a life." The refugees pressed closer, forming a growing circle around the scene. Among them were representatives of different species, Viridians like Kessa and her mother, Talvek civilians, even a few Kryn who had fled from other parts of the planet. An elderly Viridian man pushed his way to the front. His blue skin was wrinkled with age, and he walked with a cane, but his voice was strong when he spoke. "Commander Vex, I am Elder Torin of the Viridian Council. I speak for my people when I say that we want this woman to receive help. Let the humans take her." A Tolvek woman stepped forward next. "I am Dr. Syria. I have medical training. I examined this woman yesterday. She needs surgery. The humans can provide it. Let them help." More voices joined in, not shouting or demanding, but speaking with quiet determination. "Let her go, save her life, let the child keep her mother." Vex looked around at the growing crowd. His guards shifted uncomfortably. They were soldiers, trained to follow orders and maintain control, but they were not trained for this. This was not a military situation. This was something else entirely. Steve Martinez continued recording everything. The footage showed the human soldiers standing calmly, the dying woman on the stretcher, the small child crying, and the crowd of refugees speaking up for mercy. Within minutes, the video was being shared on networks across the galaxy. News organizations picked it up. Political commentators began discussing it. Social media exploded with reactions. On the Kryn homeworld, government officials watched the feed with growing concern. On Tolvek stations, people cheered for the humans. On Earth, millions watched and felt pride in their representatives. But at Checkpoint 7, the moment hung in balance. Amy worked frantically to keep Myra alive. She had administered emergency medications, stabilized the broken bones, and sealed the worst of the bleeding. But it was not enough. Myra needed surgery, blood transfusions, and intensive care. Danny, her heart rate is becoming erratic, Amy said urgently. We're losing her. Kessa heard those words and let out a cry of anguish. No, no, no. Mama, don't go. Please don't leave me. The sound of that child's grief cut through the tension like a blade. Several of the Kryn guards looked away, unable to meet her eyes. One of them, a younger soldier, had tears forming in his own eyes. Laura Bennett had seen enough. She was done with politics and protocols. She walked straight up to Commander Vex and looked him in the eye. I have a daughter, she said quietly. She's 9 years old. Her name is Sophie. Every night before I left Earth, I tucked her into bed and promised her I would come home. Do you have children, Commander? Vex's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. I think you do, Laura continued. I can see it in your eyes. So I'm asking you, one parent to another, what would you want someone to do if it was your child crying like that? If it was your daughter begging strangers to save her mother, would you want them to follow the rules, or would you want them to do what was right? The checkpoint fell silent. Everyone waited for Vex's response. The Kryn commander looked at Kessa. The small blue girl had collapsed over her mother's chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Her whole body shook with each breath. Vex closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. How long will the surgery take? He asked quietly. Amy looked up, surprised. 6 to 8 hours, including recovery stabilization, and she will survive. If we operate in the next 15 minutes, yes, she has a good chance. Vex took a deep breath. Then he turned to his guards. Lower your weapons, he ordered. The guards hesitated for just a second, then obeyed. Their rifles dropped to rest position. Vex looked at Danny. Take her, save her life. But know this, Lieutenant Hayes, I will be filing a formal report about this incident. There will be consequences. I understand, Commander, Danny said, and I accept whatever consequences come. Laura and Amy immediately began moving the stretcher toward the transport vehicle. Steve ran ahead to open the doors and prepare the interior. Kessa started to follow, but Vex held up a hand. The child stays, he said. She is still a refugee and must go through proper processing.
No,
Kessa screamed. I go with Mama. I not leave her. Danny knelt down and put both hands on Kessa's shoulders. Sweetheart, we need to take your Mama to the hospital now. It's going to be scary for you to be apart, but I not leave Mama. Kessa interrupted, her voice breaking. She all I have. Please don't take her without me. Laura looked at Vex. Commander, you can't separate them. That child has already lost everything. Don't make her lose her mother too. The rules, Vex began. To hell with the rules, Laura snapped. Then she caught herself and took a breath. Commander, please. She's 7 years old. She's terrified. Let her stay with her mother. I'll take personal responsibility for her. Vex looked at the small child clinging desperately to the stretcher. He thought about his own children, safe at home on the Kryn homeworld. He thought about what this war had done to so many families. Fine, he said finally. The child goes to... But she is your responsibility now. Thank you, Laura said sincerely. They loaded Myra into the transport, with Kessa climbing in right behind her. The little girl sat on the floor beside the stretcher, holding her mother's hand and crying. Amy strapped herself in and continued monitoring Mira's vital signs. We need to go now. Her heart is struggling. Danny climbed into the driver's seat. Steve sat beside him. Laura took one last look at Commander Vex. You did the right thing, Commander, she said. Vex didn't reply. He simply turned and walked back toward the checkpoint gate. The transport engine roared to life. Danny pulled away from the checkpoint, driving as fast as he dared on the rough road. Behind them, the crowd of refugees erupted in cheers and applause. Inside the vehicle, Amy worked steadily to keep Mira alive. She called ahead to the horizon. Medical Bay, this is Corporal Chen. Incoming critical patient, Viridian female, multiple internal injuries, prep surgical suite Alpha and have Dr. Cole standing by. ETA 12 minutes. The response came immediately. Acknowledged, Corporal, we're ready for you. Kessa looked up at Amy with terrified eyes. My mama be okay. You save her. Amy reached down and gently touched the child's head. We're going to try our very best, sweetheart. Your mama is very strong. She's fighting hard. The transport raced through the streets, heading for the landing zone where a shuttle waited to take them up to the horizon. The shuttle climbed through the atmosphere of Veridax Prime, leaving the brown dust and smoke behind. Inside, Amy Chen kept her hands on Mira's stretcher, monitoring every breath, every heartbeat. Kessa sat pressed against her mother's side, refusing to let go. Almost there, sweetheart, Laura Bennett said softly to the child. Just a few more minutes. Through the shuttle window, the USS Horizon came into view. The ship hung in the darkness of space like a small city, its lights glowing against the stars. The medical bay was already prepared, waiting for them. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. The doors opened and a medical team rushed in. Dr. Patricia Cole led them, her face focused and professional. Get her to Surgical Suite Alpha, Patricia ordered. I want full scans running immediately. Prep for emergency surgery. They transferred Myra to a floating medical bed that moved smoothly through the ship's corridors. Kessa tried to follow, but Laura gently held her back. The doctors need space to work. Honey, Laura said, we'll wait right outside. I promise we won't leave you. But Mama, Kessa sobbed. I want to stay with Mama. Patricia paused and knelt down to Kessa's level. Your mother is very sick and we need to fix her. But you can't come into the surgery room. It's not safe for you there. We'll take the very best care of her, I promise. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication badge. Here, this is special. If you press this button, it will connect you directly to me. If you need to know how your mama is doing, you just press it and I'll answer. Kessa took the badge with trembling hands and nodded. The medical team rushed Mira into surgery. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. Kessa stood in the corridor holding the badge, watching the closed doors. Laura sat down on a bench and pulled the child close. She's going to be okay, Laura said, though she knew she couldn't really promise that. Dr. Cole is the best. Inside the surgical suite, Patricia and her team worked with intense focus. They had dealt with hundreds of trauma cases, but each one mattered. Each one was someone's mother, someone's child, someone's loved one. Scanning complete, a nurse said. Severe internal bleeding from the spleen and liver. Left lung collapsed. Multiple fractured ribs. Significant blood loss. Patricia studied the scans on the display above the operating table. We'll start with the spleen. That's the primary source of bleeding. Get me 2 units of compatible blood ready. For the next 7 hours, the surgical team worked to repair the damage done by the explosion. They removed the damaged spleen, repaired the torn liver, reinflated the collapsed lung, and set the broken ribs. It was delicate work, requiring steady hands and complete focus. Outside, Kessa waited. Laura stayed with her the whole time. Amy brought them food and water. Danny checked in every hour. Even Captain Grant came down from the bridge to sit with them for a while. Is she your daughter? Grant asked Laura quietly while Kessa dozed against her shoulder. No, ma'am. But she needs someone right now. I'm happy to be that someone. Grant nodded. You did good work today, Sergeant. All of you did. Have you heard from Earth Command yet? Grant's expression tightened. Oh yes, multiple messages. The Kryn Empire filed an official complaint within an hour of the incident. They're demanding explanations and possibly disciplinary action. What will happen to us? I don't know yet. There will be inquiries and reports, but I'll make sure everyone knows that you were following my orders. If anyone faces consequences, it will be me. Laura shook her head. With respect, Captain, we all made the choice to do this. We stand together. After 7 long hours, the surgery doors finally opened. Patricia walked out, still in her surgical gown. She looked tired but satisfied. Kessa jumped up immediately. Mama, okay. Patricia smiled. Your mama is going to be fine. The surgery went very well. She's resting now. Kessa burst into tears again, but this time they were tears of relief and joy. She threw her arms around Patricia's waist and held on tight. Thank you, she said over and over. Patricia knelt down and hugged her back. You're very welcome, sweetheart. Your mama is very strong. She fought hard to stay alive for you. I see her now. Soon we need to let her wake up from the anesthesia first. But in a few hours, yes, you can see her. Those few hours felt like forever to Kessa. But finally, Patricia led her into the recovery room. Myra lay in a clean white bed, connected to monitors that beeped softly. Her blue skin had regained some of its natural color. She was breathing steadily. Kessa climbed carefully onto the bed and curled up beside her mother, being careful not to disturb the medical tubes. Mama, I hear, she whispered. The humans saved you. We're safe now. Mira's eyes slowly opened. She looked at her daughter and tears ran down her cheeks. Kessa, my sweet girl, she said in a weak voice. I thought I would never see you again. You here, Mama? You alive? The nice humans helped us. Over the next few days, Myra grew stronger. The human medical team provided excellent care, treating not just her physical injuries but also making sure she and Kessa were comfortable and felt safe. Meanwhile, the political situation developed rapidly. The video footage from Checkpoint 7 had spread across the entire galaxy. Billions of people had watched a small alien girl crying for help and the human soldiers who answered her call. Public opinion overwhelmingly supported the humans. Even many Kryn citizens criticized their own government's refugee policies. Protests erupted on several Kryn worlds, demanding more compassion and better treatment of war refugees. The Kryn Empire, facing intense pressure, quietly withdrew their complaint. They announced a review of their checkpoint procedures and promised reforms. The 12th Confederation praised the human actions publicly. Other species across the galaxy sent messages of support to Earth. 2 weeks after the surgery, Captain Grant was summoned to appear before a review board on Earth. She prepared for the worst, knowing her career might be over. But when she arrived, she found something unexpected. The room was full of senior officers, but they weren't there to punish her. They were there to commend her. Captain Grant, the lead admiral, said, "Your actions on Veridax Prime have reminded the galaxy of what humanity stands for. Yes, you broke protocol. Yes, you took a risk. But you also saved a life and inspired millions. That is what we want our officers to do. Show courage, show compassion, and do what is right, even when it's difficult." She was not caught. Instead, she received a commendation for outstanding humanitarian service. Lieutenant Hayes, Sergeant Bennett, Corporal Chen, and Private Martinez all received commendations as well. 3 months later, Myra had recovered enough to leave the horizon. A peaceful colony world called Haven's Rest had agreed to accept her and Kessa as refugees. It was a beautiful world, known for its kindness to displaced peoples from across the galaxy. On the day they were to leave, Myra asked to speak with all the soldiers who had saved her. They gathered in the hangar bay where her transport waited. But Myra walked up to each of them, moving slowly but steadily. She hugged Danny, then Laura, then Amy, then Steve. "I have no words that are big enough to thank you," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "You gave me back my life. You gave my daughter back her mother. You are the reason we have a future." Danny smiled. "We did what anyone should have done." "No," Myra said firmly. "Most people turn away. Most people say it is not their problem. You did not turn away. You saw someone who needed help and you helped. That is rare. That is precious." Kessa stood beside her mother, holding her hand. She looked up at all the tall human soldiers. "You are heroes," the small girl said in much better galactic common than she had known 3 months ago. "You are my heroes forever." Laura Bennett knelt down one more time to be at Kessa's eye level. "You be good for your mama, okay? Study hard, grow up strong, and maybe someday, when you see someone who needs help, you'll remember this and you'll be the one who doesn't turn away." Kessa nodded seriously. "I promise. I help people like you helped us." The transport lifted off, carrying Myra and Kessa toward their new home. The human soldiers stood at attention, saluting until the ship disappeared from view. Captain Grant stood with them, watching the transport go. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "All the trouble it caused?" Danny shook his head. "Not for a second, ma'am." Laura smiled. "We wore these uniforms to protect people. Today we actually got to do that. No regrets at all." The story of Kessa and her mother spread across the galaxy, told and retold. It became a symbol of hope in dark times. It reminded people that even in the middle of war and suffering, individual acts of compassion could make a difference. And for humanity, it reinforced something they had always believed, that the measure of a civilization is not in its weapons or its wealth, but in how it treats the most vulnerable among them. The humans had been tested that day at Checkpoint 7. They had faced a choice between following the rules and doing what was right. They had chosen compassion over protocol, humanity over regulation. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. Years later, Kessa would grow up on Haven's Rest. She would study medicine. Inspired by Dr. Patricia Cole, she would dedicate her life to helping refugees and displaced peoples across the galaxy. And whenever someone asked her why she chose that path, she would tell them about the day she thought she would lose her mother.